That was ugly. I mean, there's really no other way to describe Monday's game between the Yankees and the Tigers here. It was ugly. It was a cold, snowy, windy day in Detroit, which is why the game got moved up. And the Yankees' offense was frozen, and Carlos Rodon was not good. And you start to think about now you've done this thing so far this year where you win three, you lose two, you win three, you lose two, and you're 6-4 right now through 10 games. But it does feel like a lot of the hype has disintegrated a little bit in this 3-4 stretch. Look, the offense is going to have days like this. They weren't horrible, but you had 10 base runners today. You had one extra base hit, and it was a Ben Rice triple. And this wasn't good enough. It's not even that there's a lack of things to talk about. It's just I'm not trying to be as somber as maybe this tone is indicating, but it was an ugly game to watch. And if you sat down and watched this entire game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you didn't, probably consider yourself lucky. Just take the L and move on. But it was just not... The Yankees just never felt like they were in it. And it's, look, the Tigers didn't score. They scored 3 in the third, so it's not like they hit you right away. But the pivot point of this game was clearly what should have been a strike 3 on Andy Ibanez. Wasn't called strike 3, it was called a ball, and that ends in a 3-run home run. But you put yourself in that situation, where you Rodon comes in, strikes out Colt Keith, the first batter, and then walk, strike out, homer. Again, walks getting pitchers in trouble. I don't know with Rodon, man. It's you keep waiting for flashes. You keep waiting for him to maybe start to look like the guy that they signed, the guy that they're paying all this money to. And you got it on opening day. He had some scary moments in that game, but he had 7 strikeouts, holding 1 earned run there in 5 1/3 innings. And, his performance against the D-backs, walks were an issue. In this game, a little bit of everything was an issue. And it's disappointing. I don't mean to leave this much dead space in between commentary, but it's just, that's kind of how we feel. It was a deflating loss. And we talked about it on Sunday night show into Monday about the importance of this game and the fact that you had Rodon on the mound, the fact that you're going to have Skubal on the mound against you on Tuesday, and the fact that you were trying to go, as you always do, try to win 2 of 3, try to win 4 of 6 in this 2-series road stretch here. And, this was a game that you could have won. It didn't look like it once they started playing it, but on paper, this was a game that you had a good chance to win. Because you're going to play... Again, games aren't played on paper, and we've seen weirder things, but you're starting Cookie Carrasco against the AL Cy Young winner. I know he hasn't been phenomenal to start the season, but let's not pretend like Skubal stuff isn't excellent. So you're on the road against their ace. Another cold day. That was not one tomorrow, as I'm recording this, obviously today, this afternoon, 1:10 p.m. start time. That's not one you look up and say, it's a win. Not one you look up and say, we're probably going to lose that one. Which you could have, stomached a little bit more of if they win the first game of the series, and they didn't here. Look, they're going to need more from Rodon. They're just going to. If this team is going to win the AL East or maybe even a wild card spot, they're gonna need more from Carlos Rodon. He's not going to be the guy he was in San Francisco. It just, at this point, it's not going to be him. At this point, he's kind of shown you that that pitcher did not come to New York. He's not going to be there. He's not going to be that guy. But he needs to be better than he's been. And, as I sit here and I look at his numbers, I start to... There is no... I mean, you could say, Schmidt's coming. You can say Heal's coming. But I don't know, man. You start to look back at some of his starts, and, he showed some promise in September last year. His 5 starts in September were strong. And if you look at those 5 starts in September, he pitched to a 2.20 ERA. And was really solid in most of those games. 6 innings, 1 run, 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 and a third, 2 runs, 6 innings, 1 run, 6 innings, no runs, and then 5 and a third and 2 runs. And you couple that with the start of the season, and you're like, all right, well those are. I know you can't really string seasons together like that, but you could say, okay, there's a 6-start stretch there. That looked pretty good, but then you kind of go back to just the consistency issues. In August he was very up and down. His August ERA was, as I'm kind of looking through it right now. Again, he had a couple shutout starts in here, but in his 5 starts in August, his ERA was above 4, despite having 2 games where he gave up no earned runs. You start to look at. As I'm taking a look at his splits from the 2024 season now, and just kind of just looking at his month-to-month consistency, it wasn't there. And it's just disappointing. It's just disappointing because you start to look at everything that the Yankees are going to try to be this year and everything they're going to need to be this year following up a World Series appearance. But it's just not good enough. And it's incredibly disappointing. It's rough. And again, I don't want this to sound, it's April 8th. Like, it's too early in the season, but it's more so of like, there are certain key things that you looked at for the season for the Yankees this year and said, this needs to go a certain way. This needs to go right in order for the Yankees to put themselves in a position to win the division again and to even be a top wildcard team. Like, that's not a given with this rotation. And Rodon just being an above average starter was one of those things. And so far, not so good. And that's a little bit concerning. But if we want to take some positives away from this game, Ben Rice continues to do tremendously in this game. Draw 2 more walks at the top of the lineup, was on base 3 of his 4 plate appearances, got on base, including a triple. Judge had an RBI single in this game. Goldschmidt had a couple hits. Bellinger back in the lineup again for the 2nd straight game. Had some nice at-bats, but it just, we saw Adam Ottavino and Tim Hill, have a lot of success out of the bullpen. Mostly Tim Hill. Ottavino got through what he needed to get through. Barely. He basically did just enough not to completely let this game break open before, Boone handed the ball over to Tim Hill. But, and Ottavino's going to be an interesting guy. He's going to be up and back. He doesn't have options. He's going to be a DFA resign, DFA resign, DFA. You're going to see that a few times this year just because of the option situation surrounding the Yankees bullpen arms. Right now the only guy with options left is Fernando Cruz. Everybody else is out of options, or they already, like with Hedrick, sent him down. So, which they didn't want to. We'll see Hedrick back soon, I'd imagine. But just not good enough in this game. And, the Yankees kind of got themselves a chance there in the top of the fifth. They get one run. They could have gotten more. They were putting themselves in a position to tie the game, but they couldn't do it. And then they ultimately, give up. They ultimately give up a 2-run single to Justin Henry Malloy that kind of ended the game even there in the fifth. So, as you look to what you're going to do here in game 2, it's survive. That's what you're playing here, is how long can Carlos Carrasco match Tariq Skubal? Can you get to the Tigers bullpen within striking distance, tied, or even lucky enough with a lead? That's the goal, is survive Skubal. That is the plan for Tuesday afternoon. Survive Skubal, because all of a sudden, if you lose this game, which is it's a very losable game. I'm not saying you're in panic mode, but that's a 3-game losing streak. And now you're starting to worry. And I know you're going to have Fried on the mound in the finale, but you hope that's to win the series, not to salvage the series like you had to do with the Diamondbacks. So, we shall see. This was a tough loss. Not in a way that it was any like an emotionally tough loss, but it was just tough to watch. Not a game you felt great about in any perspective. So let's hope I'm a little bit more excited, a little bit more jazzed up, pun intended, and also not intended, after the afternoon game tomorrow. The Yankees need to come out and they need to play well, and they're going to need 5+ innings from Cookie Carrasco that are good. Not 5 innings where you give up 4 runs. They're going to need 5 innings, 2 runs from Carrasco if they're going to win this game, I'd imagine. So we'll see how it ends up going, and we'll be back right here on the Bombers Beat podcast to talk about it.